Hi everyone, welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. Welcome to the Knitting Turnpike. My name is Gina Pike. I'm so happy that you're here with me today. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a project that I'm going to be working on for all of April. I have mentioned this project to you before. This is called the Romi Hill Mystery Shawl Knit Along for Spring 2021. Before we get into showing you the pattern, how it all works up, I wanted to also give you a little bit of a tutorial about the stitches that are in this shawl. Many of you, I gave away the yarn kit that I had purchased from A Verb for Keeping Warm and the shawl pin, and Jennifer Tran won that. Congratulations, Jennifer. I hope that you're going to be knitting this along with me. A lot of you expressed an interest in knitting this shawl and were a little bit concerned if the stitches were going to be a little bit complicated. And so far, the stitches that I have seen for Clue 1 in her legend are these stitches that I'm about to show you. So, I was working on my video and it's getting darker, so that's why I came outside to film this. I was going to do my Romi Hill Mystery Shawl Knit Along Clue 1 and all the stitches for that shawl, that Clue 1, all in one video. And as I was editing this, it just didn't flow right. So I'm going to release two videos on the same day. First video is going to be all of the stitches that I've seen so far in the Romi Hill Mystery Knit Along for Clue 1. The second video is going to be the Clue 1, the shawl. So there'll be two videos on the same day. I hope you guys don't mind me doing it that way. I just couldn't get the flow right, so thank you guys for understanding. There are a knit stitch and a purl stitch and a yarn over stitch, and I'm not going to show you how to do those because I have videos for each one of these already in my video library of videos that I've done, but I will link them if you're interested in those. There's a stitch called knit through the back loop. Basically, when you knit a stitch, this is knitting through this front loop. If you're going to knit through the back loop, this is the back loop of the stitch. So if you're going to knit through the back loop, you're going to insert your needle through that back loop, wrap your yarn around your right hand needle, pull the stitch through the stitch on the needle, and pull it off. That's all there is to it. And the stitch is oriented differently. Whereas the stitch normally leans to the right a little bit, the stitch is more centered on the stitch, like that. Alright, there's a centered double decrease. There you go. Basically, you're going to slip two stitches together knitwise, knit one stitch, and pass the slip stitch over. So that's the centered double decrease. The great thing about the centered double decrease is that some stitches, when you do decreases, will lean to the right, or some will lean to the left. The CDD is centered, and it just doesn't have a lean to it. So that's why designers will put it into their pattern. Plus it takes 3 stitches and decreases it down to 1. There's an increased 3 stitch, which I've called this the knit yarn over knit. I've called it a star stitch. It makes a really interesting design. You go into your stitch and you knit yarn over knit all into the same stitch. So you take 1 stitch and make it into 3 and create a little cute design into your pattern. How to do it: when you get to that point in your pattern, you just insert your knitting needle into the stitch as if you're going to knit it, because you're going to knit a stitch. Do not pull the stitch off the left hand needle. Do a yarn over, then stick your right hand needle back into that same stitch and do another knit stitch. And you've done a knit yarn over knit stitch, and that's, you're taking 1 stitch and increasing it to 3, and that's why Romi is calling it an increased 3 stitch. You have your, of course, a lot of you have done this decreased stitch before, a knit 2 together stitch, where you take 2 stitches, knit them together, and the stitch will lean to the right. There's simple pass the slip stitches over. If you have some sort of decrease where the first part of that decrease is where you slip a stitch, either knitwise or purlwise, sometimes you have to take that slip stitch and pass it over stitches that are after it. And you know, there are lots of variations of that. The next stitch for the Romi Hill stitch tutorial is a stitch called the KFBF stitch, and you're going to take 1 stitch and make it into 3, and it makes a really beautiful design that kind of fans a little bit. She uses this stitch a lot in this first clue, so here's how you do it. The next stitch is the it's called a KFBF. You're going to knit in the front, then the back, and then the front of the same stitch. And this makes 1 stitch become 3. So this is how you do it. You put your right needle into the stitch you're going to do this stitch for. You knit the stitch. Do not pull it off the left-hand needle. Put your needle through the back of that same stitch. Knit through the back of the stitch. Do not pull it off the needle yet. So you've got 2 stitches here. Then you go back through the front of that stitch and you knit through that. And that 1 stitch has become 3 stitches, and that's what it looks like. It's a knit through the front, the back, and the front. And on the back you got a little bit of a bump right there in the front of it. Actually, it's not a bump, it's just that the stitch is oriented through the back. It looks a little bit like a bump, but it's basically just the twisted knit stitch. And that's how you do a KFBF stitch. The other 2 stitches that were in the legend is with the working yarn held to the back of your work and with the working yarn held to the front of your work. And basically it's just you're going to be slipping stitches, and the designer Romi has asked sometimes when you slip a stitch to hold the work to the front, and the work it'll leave like a little bit of a line in front of the work, and then you take it back after you finish slipping the stitches, or you can slip the stitches with the working yarn in back. And I think that is actually all of the stitches, except there is one thing I do want to explain. Romi Hill, her pattern, she always has written text and she always has a chart. This year, for the first time that I've done it, she's had 2 charts for each clue, which is a little interesting. She has a WSIWYG, which means what you see is what you get. And those charts are basically, the symbols are going to reflect what they look like. And basically those charts, I've explained this before, kind of like when I did the Japanese sampler scarf. When you knit on the wrong side, because the chart is focused on what it looks like on the right side, a lot of times when you see a symbol on a wrong side row, it will mean something different than it does if it's on the right side row. So you have to really pay attention to the symbols in the charts, or you can get confused. Because if you see a knit, like something that looks like a knit stitch, but you're on the wrong side row, it probably means you're going to purl the stitch instead of knit it. So that because again, this type of chart is just showing you what the design looks like. The other type of chart we have is a what you see is what you knit chart, a WSIWYK. Those are my favorite types of charts because it's just more simple. It's whatever is in the box, whatever the legend says it is, that's what you do. So you don't have to think about, if I'm on the wrong side row, I need to reverse this type of a stitch. You just, if you see a knit stitch on the wrong side row, you knit the stitch. And that, it doesn't show you what the design looks like. It's just a little bit easier when you're knitting it to not have to think so much about the wrong side row and paying attention to that. So we have both of these charts for every clue this year, which is very interesting. And if you're interested in learning how to knit with charts, this would be a great pattern to teach yourself how to do that, because you do still have the text down below to fall back on, and make sure, you know, look at it, see, this is what I would do, double check yourself with the text below, and oh, I got it right, yay, I'm actually think I'm getting the learning how to do the charts well, and you can feel more comfortable going down that path. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that, for you guys who are expressing an interest in knitting this, and I wanted you to see that these stitches are not that complicated. If you don't like my explanation, please look these up on YouTube. There are so many videos on knit stitches and knitting tutorials that I'm sure you will find something maybe explained a little bit differently than I would, that maybe it clicks better for you. So if you don't get it the way I showed it, don't give up. Continue on. Look at another tutorial. I always look at 2 or 3 tutorials of the same thing before I really do something, just to, you know, everybody explains something a little bit in a little bit different way, and some people connect with that, some other people connect with the other way. So, you know, don't give up. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You know, the best way to learn these stitches are to grab up some yarn, pair of knitting needles, and practice. But you know, you do them throughout the shawl, you will get better as you go along, and I say that you can do them. Just take them one stitch at a time. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're new here and you like knitting, crochet, and tutorial content. Would love to have you here with us, and thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.